Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. It is Thanksgiving Eve as we record this. Of course, I'm Dave Smith, and of course, he is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. We got a good episode for you guys today. Rob, how you feeling?
Doing well. I already had my first Thanksgiving sandwich yesterday. They had the where like the roasted chickens are. They had the roasted turkey, so I was like, "Let's go!" Bought that, some bread, some cranberry sauce. So I'm already filled with Thanksgiving spirit.
I'd imagine this is the holiday that animates you more than any other holiday.
Oh, for sure. I get to see my family.
Yeah.
I don't have to do Jewish bullshit. It's a win.
Yeah, just drinking and eating. There really is like there is a turn where like when you're a little kid, your favorite holiday is always revolved around like presents or like, like something that's fun for little kids. But when you as an adult, Thanksgiving beats everything, man. Thanksgiving. Sure, you're supposed to be thankful on some level, but really the holiday is just, at least, dude, I'll tell you the tradition. Maybe this sounds fucked up and sexist, but I am fucked up and sexist, and I stand by that. But it was always, when I was a kid to now, it's always like the women are like, I mean, right now, my mother-in-law and my wife are upstairs just preparing what I would describe. They've never been happier. Literally, they've never been happier. And I would describe it as a criminally insane amount of food for the amount of people who are coming to, like, I mean, like just from eyeballing it, I think I'm going to have 15 people over at my house tomorrow. I think there's enough food for 300 people. Like, it's just a ridiculous, but man, are they, anyway, the point is though, that it's always just kind of been, to me, the holiday has always just been like, oh, pour yourself a glass of whiskey and sit down and bullshit for a little bit, and then sit down to a nice big meal, and then have some good leftovers in the fridge for a few days. And what's better than that?
Whoever thought of this one was good. I'm sorry that some pilgrims had to kill some Indians, but 100 years later.
I think that, from what I understand, Rob, that happened later. From what I understand, the dinner was very successful, and then I think in the immediate aftermath, things did go in a genocidal direction. Sure, but that's not like, okay, things happen. Life is complicated. It doesn't mean we can't still celebrate that meal. Although I will, in all seriousness, I mean, not that I'm not being serious about all the stuff I said before, but I do think I do like the idea of a holiday based around thankfulness. I think that's good. I think it's very healthy for people to have gratitude and appreciation for the things they have. I try my best to do that. I think that's the best inoculation against being a shitty person, is being grateful for what you have. So yeah, hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. What do you're going home, Rob? But no,
it's easy peasy. My family does lunch. I'll be asleep by 3, waking back up at 8 p.m. for leftovers. It's a nice day.
Yeah, love it. I love the eating early too. Yeah, every aspect of it's very good. Now, another thing that I'm thankful for this year is I'm particularly thankful for dumbass congressmen who start Twitter beefs with me and then get ratioed to high holy heaven. That's
He's got
pretty
his
cool.
eye on you.
Well, we all know which one. All right, listen, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes here. But as some of you may have seen, completely, I would say, unprompted by me, Dan Crenshaw, the sitting representative out of Texas there, has started attacking me on Twitter. Now, I will say, I don't exactly know what the deal with Dan Crenshaw is. He's a weird guy. And I'm, like I think he's got some issues with alcohol, is my suspicion. I mean, there was this
We're not going to fault him for that, though. I mean, if we're going to criticize a guy, that's not the thing we're going to go after them for.
Oh, no. I'm saying handle your fucking booze, dude. Like, what's wrong with you? We all drink. You're the only one making it weird. Well, no, he had like some incident in Mexico on a congressional trip there, and then he was like banned from congressional international travel for months because I forget what he got kicked out of a bar or something like that. But anyway, which look, I honestly, probably of all the things about the guy, that might be the only thing I kind of like about him. The rest is pretty bad. But if you remember this, Rob, and this must have been from like this was a while ago, it was like 4 or 5 years ago. You remember he used to lurk in our comment section?
I don't think that was him. I think that was
No, dude, it was him. Brian showed me, like, you could click on the thing and it was him or someone from his official account would like lurk in our comment section. And then I also happen to know like some behind the scenes stuff that I shouldn't, but let's just say he's reached out to some people before and been like, you can't have this Dave Smith guy on, blah, 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 blah. And then as a response to that, it was propositioned that we debate, which he immediately said no to. So anyway, he's been aware of who I am for a weird amount of time. Like, not just, it kind of makes sense, like maybe over the last year, maybe over the last couple years, but like before that, he was like aware of me, and obviously not not a fan, as he's, you know, trying to be the John McCain of this generation in the Senate. But so he came at me on Twitter, and I did think that this was actually like, I thought this was something worthy of bringing to the show, because it's not just, well, first of all, it's an actual congressman who's like arguing with us here. So, okay, you're somebody who holds political power. And then on top of that, like the way he came at me and then what he was trying to do afterward. I don't know if you saw any of this, Rob, but he's basically trying to make it that like he quote tweeted somebody else saying that I was denigrating him for his military service or something like that. So now the angle that they're trying to go with, which is quite pathetic, is that I was insulting all of the troops when I was insulting Dan Crenshaw, which, to be very clear here, I was just insulting Dan Crenshaw, which I refuse to stop doing.
It's amazing how politicians will turn supposedly real men, I mean, the guy did real service in the military, into the bitchiest of tactics of how dare you, shame on you, what you said was offensive, and clearly that wasn't even your statement. But even if it was, you can actually just be a dude and have a conversation or take on ideas. To go with the just direct to shame on you, you should be ashamed of yourself, and all the feelings of all these individuals that I'm going to speak on behalf of them. It's like just the most lowly female liberal behavior.
Yes.
If we're going to rank female liberal like annoying behavior, I mean, that's got to be on the top of the list.
It's like on the level of like the most annoying like chick, you know, saying the most annoying thing, and then you go, that's so annoying, and she goes, oh, it's because I'm a woman, and you're like, no, it's because you're you. Like, what are you hiding behind all this nonsense? And also, anyway, so just I'll just read what was written, and then I wanted to you know, make a few points about it. But so Dan Crenshaw just tweeted at me. He said, Dave Smith, seriously? This random comedian has gotten way too much attention as a pseudo-intellectual on foreign policy. We all know Candace has lost it, but don't forget about her co-conspirators. They're all in on the grift, begging for your engagement on social media. So, again, it's just, like you said, just all of them, they all argue like teenage girls. Like, it's just not one point, not anything of substance, just you're a poo-poo pants is basically what they come at you with. Like, what are you, like, how does a grown man write this, send it, and not just feel ashamed inside? It's just very weird. I did, by the way, it made me laugh that Clint's response was, he said, if you debate Dave, I'll donate $5,000 to your favorite charity. And then he put in parentheses, APAC, which I did.
That is great.
I don't know, that really made me laugh. His APAC is Dan's favorite charity. Is just, I thought that was good. So then I said something like, I go, random comedian. Well, then why is a sitting congressman wasting time talking to a random comedian? In which he responded, and this to me was what was it? So here's his response. So we could take this apart a little bit, but he said, I waste time addressing you because unfortunately you have enough people who buy into your nonsense. Maybe you're funnier than I thought, labeling me a war hawk. What war did I ever vote for, Dave? Yeah, I was in college, not a congressman. Sorry, I just fought and sacrificed in those wars so that grifters like you could sit back and safely build up conspiratorial narratives about all of it. So, Dave DeCamp, by the way, the great Dave DeCamp over at antiwar.com, he did jump on the part about, he's going, I'm not a war hawk, I don't support wars, and pointed out Dan's entire voting record. He voted for the war in Syria and Yemen, and he voted against troops being pulled out. He voted for, and of course, Ukraine and Gaza, whatever. He's supported every war he's had the opportunity to support. But I jumped more on the other point, which I just think that this goes well beyond a petty beef between me and Dan Crenshaw, which again, I don't have a beef with Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw has a petty beef with me because I'm against the war party. But I don't have a petty beef with him. He's not even really a very major figure within the war party. But I do have a real issue with both. Well, look, I'd be completely honest with this. I have an issue with a vet in general who fought in the terror wars saying that these wars protected your freedom. I mean, how the hell have you not woken up yet to this? Now, I'm not sitting here and trying to I'm not blaming the vets. In fact, I think the argument is very pro-military. The idea is that we don't want your brothers and sisters, mostly brothers, to die for no reason and have their lives ruined and all this shit. But for Dan Crenshaw, for a sitting member of Congress to still be saying that the reason why I can podcast, or the reason why I can, I'm safe to do this because of the war on terrorism is, I mean, it's an appalling thing to believe in 2025, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I mean, first of all, look, the only theater in the war on terrorism. I mean, what are the theaters in the war on terrorism, Rob? There was Iraq and Afghanistan. There was Libya. There was Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Pakistan, Niger. I think I'm missing a couple of the other countries that Libya spilled into there in Northern Africa, a couple other Northern African countries. None of them had anything to do with 9/11 except Afghanistan, where Al-Qaeda was housed. Okay. That's just not and so we took out Al-Qaeda by Christmas of December 2001. And then we fought a 20-year regime change war against the Taliban. So in other words, the Taliban never the Taliban's a bunch of goat herders in Afghanistan. They were no threat to Americans' freedom. Saddam Hussein certainly was no threat. Anyway, the point is, no matter how many people in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Pakistan, no matter how many people you killed there, that had nothing to do with protecting anybody's freedom. And it's pretty appalling for a sitting member of Congress to claim that in any meaningful sense, I'm able to podcast in a way I would. Literally, the only thing the war on terrorism has done for me podcasting has given me a bunch of content. That I'll grant you. You've given me a bunch of wars to oppose, and you've handed me the easy card of winning 1 million debates because I'm just on the side that's against mass murder for no reason. Well, that's all, Dave, that has been affected.
I think if we fought more wars, we could be even more free. Prove me wrong.
Right.
Prove me wrong that there isn't more freedom available for us.
This is the logic that we're dealing with here with Dan Crenshaw. So I pointed out, I responded to him and I said, you fought in a catastrophic 20-year regime change war against the Taliban that failed and left a better armed Taliban. How did that make any American safer to have any, what, just give me the logic of this. And then that's when his response is, so he didn't respond to me again. Then some other hack on Twitter said, don't attack veterans for fighting wars that they were called to serve. So that's it. And then Dan Crenshaw quote tweets that and starts going off about how I've revealed what a truly reprehensible person I am for, attacking veterans for serving in wars. Although, again, it's all these guys, they have to, don't get me wrong. People like Dan Crenshaw he's a very unimpressive person. He is not bright, but he's not this stupid. Nobody who is capable of speaking in complete sentences is so stupid that they wouldn't understand that. Rob, the point I was just making, was that attacking a veteran for serving in a war? No. The critique was claiming that a war protected liberty when it clearly didn't. By the way, most veterans agree with me on this. This is like he's trying to pull this thing like, what a reprehensible person you are because you say these wars didn't protect your freedom. But the thing is, the veterans all know this. This is what, even back in 2008, 2012, Ron Paul got more money from active duty military than anybody else. To this day, the veterans are the ones who are against the forever wars as much as any other demographic in this country, partly because they actually sacrificed in them. Like Dan Crenshaw, but he betrays that sacrifice now by trying to get more military members hurt in these stupid wars. But anyway, I just so right away, I guess the first comment to just make, Rob, is just like, how pathetic. How pathetic. Isn't that embarrassing? Just as an American, isn't it embarrassing to have a sitting member of Congress even getting in these Twitter spats, but then also just using the most disingenuous, like, bitchy girl fucking tactics? Get the fuck out of here, dude.
I like the idea of Dan Crenshaw. He's sitting in his basement. He's got the one lamp up. He's got all the military plans out, and he sends out that tweet, and then you fire back with the wars didn't make us safer, and he sits there and goes, "Oh, he fell right into my I'm offended trap."
That's it. That's what you got. What do you mean, you people? That's what you've got, Congressman Crenshaw. By the way, another wonderful element of Twitter in all of this is just that this dude, he is just getting ratioed on every goddamn post. Like every post is just people just dunking on him because it's weird. Like, when people go out, it's like these people like congressmen who, like, he's like, protected by armed security every day, and he's in his cushy office and he's going and giving speeches. But then you wander out into Twitter, which is just like the wild, wild west, and you try to bring this bullshit, and he's just getting eaten up, which is, a lot of fun. But anyway, also a lot of fun, but also it is a little bit indicative of just how much the audience is over this bullshit. But anyway, so he said, Now he says in this tweet where he quote tweets the other guy. Let me read this part. So he goes, and for Dave Smith, he goes, I'll give you a simple answer about what we got for my sacrifice and the ultimate sacrifices my friends paid. No more 9/11s. That's what we got. Thank you, Dave Smith, for revealing what a truly reprehensible person you are. And I thought it was simply that Dave was, I thought it was simply that Dave was uninformed and misguided. But that response to me below shows his total contempt for all veterans who have served. Okay, so just, on the last point, like, obviously just pathetic, but let's go a little bit deeper than that. And it's just funny also. It kind of reminds me of like woke leftists when they would always get offended on behalf of black people. And you're like, I don't know. I'm from Brooklyn. I've met black people and they're not like thin-skinned snowflakes. One of the best things about black people is that they're not like pussy bitches like you liberal women are. And say the same thing to Dan Crenshaw here. Like, you've offended all of us veterans. Shut up, dude. I've fucking met veterans. None of them are snowflake bitches like this. None of them go, you said the war didn't protect freedom. I'm offended. That's not how they are. You sit around in a room full of veterans, dude, and talk about how all the wars were bullshit and sold off lies. And you're going to get a lot of people going, yep. That's what you're going to get. There might be a few in there who disagree, but even they're not going to be snowflakes like this. But I did want to, to the broader claim, because I do think this should be responded to on the show. The claim here, and it is really, when you think about it, like it is, it's the Dick Cheney logic. It's Team B from the CIA logic, right? So like the logic would be, Rob, if your radar doesn't detect any Soviet submarines, then that means the Soviets have made submarines that can't be detected by radar. right? Like that's the logic of all of it. And so it's a similar type of thing where all the evidence against your position just means your position is right. There wasn't another 9/11. It's the COVID vaccine, Rob. You know, you get the vaccine and then you still get COVID and you get it so bad that you're in the hospital and they go, you would have been dead. It would have been that plus worse. Sure, you look at the terror wars and you see nothing positive out of them, but it would have been another 9/11.
I heard that without the tariffs, prices would be even higher.
Right. It's the constant like corrupt politicians' defense of failed policies across the board. But I think like even on another level, you could scratch a little bit deeper there and go, well, hold on. What do you mean by another 9/11? What do you mean a 9/11? Because like theoretically speaking, like when you say another 9/11, I mean, the Twin Towers are gone, right? So you're not talking about planes hitting the Twin Towers again. You're saying another terrorist attack. And what's so horrible about terrorist attacks is that innocent people get killed, right? People die. And so, so the war on terrorism, we lost about 7,000 soldiers. So already it's more than 2 9/11s worth of military members who were killed. Now, of course, that number really gets changed when you factor in the approximately 30,000 U.S. military members who committed suicide in the aftermath of the wars. So now, like, I'm just saying, like, did you prevent another 9/11 or did you cause many more 9/11s? Now, if you want to bring in the fact, obviously this doesn't mean anything to Dan Crenshaw, because all those brown people in those countries aren't people, but the death toll is around 4 million. And that's what the Cost of War Project put the number at. If you go through, like, obviously the big ones are in Iraq, about 1 million people died. In Afghanistan, I think it was a couple 100,000 people died. You put about 500,000 in Syria, about 500,000 in Yemen. You factor in the Libya is really where we don't have the best numbers, but I mean, it's got to be how many people died as a result of that thing being turned into a failed state is pretty damn high. But anyway, the Cost of War Project, they put it at approximately 4 million. So again, the point is you didn't avoid another 9/11, you committed 1,000 of them. So right on the, like, what exactly do we mean avoided a 9/11? Also, there's like there's conflations between certain things, right? So like, let's say hypothetically there were a lot of things that were done after 9/11, right, Rob? But so like little things like you're allowed to have a gun on a plane now. They lock the cockpit door. Just locking the cockpit door changes the entire landscape of 9/11. But like, if you locked the cockpit door and you're like, oh, now it's much harder to hijack planes, now there won't be another 9/11. You didn't need to fight 7 wars. You know what I'm saying? So there might be some things that we've done that might like be like, oh, this will make it more difficult, even if you wanted to count like the TSA or something like that, even though I don't think either of us are going to argue that does much. But that has nothing to do with the wars. Like, you have to actually demonstrate how fighting those wars prevented another 9/11, because there's no way you can do that. Al-Qaeda grew in number. ISIS formed during the terror wars. The radical Sunni terrorist problem only got worse as a result of these wars. And also, Rob, it did come with a price tag to it. The price tag was about $8 trillion. Now, is anyone gonna say that spending $8 trillion on a failed mission made us more secure? Was that good for our national security? And in fact, I think many people have argued that the debt is one of our biggest national security threats. So, look, forget the little Twitter spat. What's really revealed here is how disgusting this mentality is. And I found this kind of interesting because it speaks to like a more general theme on the show. That is, he's like in this same post, within one post, it's all contained in a tweet. Dan Crenshaw is talking about what a morally reprehensible person I am. And then he's also defending wars of aggression and choice that killed millions of people. And like, man, one of those is bad enough, but to combine the two together and then think that there's anything like that, you have the moral high ground to judge anybody else. You know, I've seen this over and over again. Like I just had a thing with one of the Babylon Bee guys about this. Alex Berenson, of course, who is kind of just sad, and I don't really want to continue our feud at all. But he came out defending the war in Iraq too, and it's like, to me, why? Like somebody's gonna have to explain to me, why is that not 1,000 times worse than the worst things Nick Fuentes has ever said? Like, why is it that you guys can sit here and defend mass murder campaigns that were clearly sold off lies? Like, by the way, Alex Berenson, who shares this, Alex Berenson worked at the New York Times while they were lying us into the war in Iraq. Now, when he defends the war in Iraq today, is he defending any of those lies? No, he can't. They've all been exposed. But he just goes, Iraq is a better place today than it was in 2002. I mean, very debatably, is it a better place than it was in 2002? But like, in order to get to that place, you had to kill 1 million people, dislocate like 9 million more, lose thousands of American servicemen, tens of thousands committing suicide in the wake. Is life better for them? Is it better for any of their family members? Oh, yeah. You just yada yada over the mass murder part and then go, oh, well, I think the result is better than the beginning. I'm sorry. You are a worse person than the worst groiper. Like, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be outraged about like sarcasm from young men online, but you guys celebrate, you bloodthirsty monsters. You celebrate mass killing. You know, people objected to what Tucker Carlson said when he was on the show. And he said that like what animates all of these people is death. Like they're in this giant death cult, but they are. They're all in a death cult, man. They go, oh, Hamas is a death cult. Yeah, it is. You're in one too. Like this is, you know, in the world of being offended and clutching pearls. Well, like, how about that? How about being offended by defending the mass slaughter of innocent women and children? That seems to be a good place to start. I'm offended by that, Dan Crenshaw. And by the way, I will say in closing on the response to Dan Crenshaw, again, like you said, the reason why you're wasting time on a random comedian is because I've got a big following and a whole lot of people are believing my bullshit. Okay, fine. So you're posting to try to, you know, expose me or something like that. So why not come do it, man? I mean, you chickened out once, but like, why not? Come on the show. Let's see how it goes. Let's see. You come bring that Dick Cheney bullshit to me. And let's see how that works out for you. Open challenge, Dan Crenshaw. Now run and hide, Congressman. Go back to Capitol Hill because you know you don't want any of that. Oh,
I know how we can prevent another 9/11.
How's that?
You just don't build buildings so high people want to knock them over. Simple.
There you go. 2-story maximum.
That's it.
This is the new normal.
Stick to inconspicuous buildings. You know what else you can do is not train foreign terrorists. Or fun Islamic extremists and call them whatever, the middle ground, or what was Obama's thing? The
JV.
Medium, the JV? No, it was like the medium terrorists, the rational, what was his line?
The moderate rebels.
Yeah, the moderate rebels. Quit funding and arming moderate rebels. Go listen to the intro of this very show.
Yeah, there you go. Well, they were both those quotes were like in the same thing, because when he was pushing the moderate rebel, which by the way, isn't that that really is one of the funniest government lies ever. This is when they were starting the dirty war in Syria. Or I guess it was a year after they had started the thing. But where they said essentially that there were like, okay, so we knew that Bashar al-Assad was the leader of Syria. And then they knew that the bin Ladenite head choppers were amongst the resistance. But then they tried to convince you that there were moderate rebels in the middle. who were going to be able to defeat both sides through their moderation. And then, like, but just imagine, first of all, like, when you're talking about a civil war, I think by definition, anyone who picks up a rifle and jumps into the war you can't really call them a moderate anymore, Rob. And then, like, if you were going to say that these moderates are so, like, you have to make the argument that they're moderate guerrilla fighters who are such, like, killers that they could take out the Assad government and take out Al-Qaeda and ISIS, but they're still moderate. That's a tough. So they really try, and of course, who would be stupid enough to run with that? The New York Times. That's who's stupid enough to run with the idea that we have moderate rebels. So at the same time, when Obama was trying to sell you on the moderate rebels, he referred to ISIS as the JV because he was trying to downplay, like, the growing threat of ISIS. And so he was like, those guys, little JV guys. And then they invaded Western Iraq and conquered the thing. And they didn't seem so JV. It was a real varsity move that they pulled off when they invaded Iraq. Okay. All right, we should switch gears because there are a couple of other things that we wanted to talk about. By the way, if you guys are in the live chat, if you want to put some questions in there, I will do my best to get to a few. If you want to be a member of the live chat, you got to sign up over at partoftheproblem.com. Great way to support the show. We really appreciate it. Okay, so there were a couple other things that I thought were important that we had not discussed yet this week. One of the major ones it's one of these stories that I do think is much bigger than the actual story. But I know you've been following this. James Comey, all charges dismissed. Oof. What can you even say about this, Rob? I mean, it seems to me from everything I've read about it, it seems pretty uncontroversial that the story here, at least on the surface of it, not saying there's not more to it, there quite possibly is, but at least on the surface, is that the prosecutor completely messed up this thing. And like all types of like little technical things that are just like that. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I did interrupt you. You're right, but you're wrong. So the prosecutor did make errors, and the biggest error was they didn't show the final document to the grand jury, and also promised that there was going to be additional bad evidence that they didn't actually present to the grand jury. That's actually not why it got thrown out. It got thrown out because both this and the Letitia James case both got thrown out because she was not her status was granted improperly. And so you need to get like actual congressional approval for these appointees unless they're on a temporary basis. And she had overstayed the amount of time that would have been like the temporary basis, and they just reappointed her anyways. And so it's but this is what, from my understanding, so it's very technical. The judge basically just threw it out as she's not allowed to be in that position. Both cases can be rebrought.
Right.
The Comey case is less likely to be rebrought because it's past the statute of limitations. The Letitia James one, I think, probably will get rebrought. So it actually was like, it's just classic Donald Trump being a loser, and that they did something in a sloppy fashion and they can't walk away from a victory on the Comey case. Clearly guilty. Would have been good to take down someone in the deep state who clearly did Donald Trump wrong, but it's just Donald Trump loser shit that when push comes to shove, they're just kind of sloppy and they don't execute well. So in this one, yes, you're 100% right. The prosecutor did do a bunch of stuff that probably also would have gotten the case thrown out, but that's actually not why it was dismissed. It was dismissed because of
she shouldn't be there to begin with.
Yeah, I think it was actually probably an error by the AG, whatever that lady's name is.
Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
It's just mishandled on every level. And, there's something obviously with Comey, the thing that's bigger about this is that, look, we all watched this, okay? When they tried to bury the Epstein story, they immediately pivoted to Russiagate. And that's when Tulsi came out with this press conference. She said, we have the proof that Obama committed treason, were her words. And, I don't think it technically is treason, and probably the DNI should be real precise with the language she's using, but some type of sedition, a seditious conspiracy or something like that. Now, obviously, Comey is one of the top people involved in the Russiagate, hoax. And I don't even like, knows Donald Trump branded it as the Russiagate hoax. I always, for years, me and you, when we covered this, Rob, I always branded it as a deep state led attempted coup against a sitting US president, because I do think there's something about hoax sounds almost like a little like, oh, you almost got me with that one. Whereas like a deep state attempted coup sounds more like the constitutional crisis that it really is. But Comey was, look, the key players in it were Obama, Brennan, and Comey. And then of course later there, McCabe and ultimately Mueller. And then there were the Strzok and, all these other outside figures. But like Comey was by far the highest ranking one that they ever saw. Almost nobody has paid anything for Russiagate. There's the one lawyer at the FBI who did get charged and convicted for misleading the FISA courts. I don't believe he did any jail time though. But everybody else has been fine. I guess Strzok got fired and whatever.
Yeah, but then they gave him back his pension.
Right. So like really no, but so okay, now Comey, now they weren't going after Comey for Russiagate exactly. They weren't charging him with like leading a seditious conspiracy against the president of the United States. But they did his the charge of like leaking classified information was related to the Russiagate thing. And so it seemed like an attempt from the regime to at least throw you from the administration, I should say, to at least throw you something. We got to give some red meat to our base. So let's at least give him Comey. And then of course, to watch that whole thing fall apart, it is just like, look, it's like, it's another just nail in the coffin of the Trump era, the idea of draining the swamp, all of this stuff. It's like essentially they were like, okay, I can't drain the swamp, but the best I could do is I could get Comey for you. Is that okay? Oh, by the way, we can't even get that. We can't even. In a case where he's dead to rights, he clearly did what he's accused of, and there still will be no punishment for it.
And the biggest disgrace was, at least it was exciting, where you're like, all right, maybe we'll start with Comey and they'll go after the other ones, but just sloppy. They couldn't get it done. And believe me, after losing this one, I don't know how enthusiastic they're going to be to go after other individuals, and lost it in such pathetic fashion. Didn't even make it to trial. Like, look at what happened to Donald Trump. There was a similar thing, that the Atlanta case got thrown out because the prosecutor was spending all the money on her boyfriend, so that her boyfriend would then use the money and take her out on trips. But that still pinned him down for 2 full years. Yep. Like, they brought a bunch of bullshit cases, but they were able to run with it for 3 years. The Donald Trump people, they're just bad executors. That there's no reason why this couldn't have been brought sooner. There's no reason that with the Crossfire hurricane and everything that happened, they can't go after one person and then they bring one lawsuit. It literally gets thrown out within 3 weeks. Now Comey can go hit the media circuit and go, hey, look, I told you I was 100. Firstly, it's funny because the grounds of the case were not even addressed. They just didn't assign a prosecutor properly.
Yeah. And I'll say I have, who knows what's going to happen, but I have very low confidence that they'll even bring these charges again, or that anything, it's like with all of these things, at a certain point, you got to admit there is no 4D chess. There is no plan. You're just getting nothing. That's what's actually happening here. And we're all better off admitting that sooner rather than later. Okay. Let's what was the other? I
think that's a good transition into Doge being done.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. And that is a good transition there. Yeah, Doge has officially disbanded, huh? What a run.
Well,
what did we get? What did we get in terms of cuts? Nothing. Not a penny.
I saw the headline somewhere from the administration that while Doge is done, the values still live on. And I'm like, you guys didn't even do anything while it was there. And you want to talk about one of the early hopes for Donald Trump was Doge. Like, that was one of the actual real hopes for Donald Trump, was like, wow, they might get this smart tech billionaire to comb through all the government funds and actually reduce spending. And then we found out pretty quickly that they weren't doing that. But then people wanted to say, no, 4D chess, Donald Trump is serious. No, they're going to do it. The things will be implemented. And here you have it within 1 year. Firstly, the best case scenario clearly didn't come true. Donald Trump wants to spend as much as the greatest ever, spending more than anyone ever. He wants to spend more than anyone ever, is going to make zero effort whatsoever. And he had a mandate on that. People were very excited by, let's clean up the spending. I don't even think they're going after all the supposed NGO funding that the Democrats are basically using against mine and yours interests. We had a couple of goofy storylines about things that were going to, like, trans kids in Brazil. And then I don't know if that stuff got refunded, but a lot of it did get just refunded when they did, like, the next budget. But I mean, we're within 1 year of Donald Trump's presidency. And Elon Musk walked away from that project, and I guess they're formally shutting it down. So for everyone that gave me shit 3 months ago, it's like the COVID stuff. You couldn't have been more wrong. Donald Trump has absolutely no interest in reducing the size, scope, or spending of our government.
Yeah, and look, if he did, obviously, as we've said many times, he could have pressured Congress to give him a bill with real spending cuts. He had all the juice in the world amongst the Republican Party, who controlled all of Congress. Or talking when he first came in earlier this year, he could have done that. And instead, I know I've told this before on the show. I try to never give anything away of private conversations, but I had dinner with Vivek Ramaswamy. It was short. It was the night that John Jones fought Stipe Miocic. So it was, shortly after Trump had won the election and Doge was just getting started. And I basically had said to him, I said to him over dinner, I was kind of like, well, the thing is that, it's not a real government program. And I was hoping Vivek would have gotten a position with a little more teeth in it. You know what I mean? But I said, hey, well, look, the bright side is that what Doge can do is it can really insert this issue of the unsustainable debt and government spending and all this stuff. Like you have an opportunity to like popularize this stuff in a way that no one has before. And so that's pretty cool. And then he was like, no, dude, you don't understand. We got tricks up our sleeves that these guys haven't thought of yet. And we got and like, he believed it. I don't think he was trying to sell me on it. Of course, I think a few weeks later he was out. And then, of course, none of that ended up materializing. But you're absolutely right, Rob, when you say, look, Donald Trump ran on Doge. They were actually like talking about creating a department of efficiency in government, like on the campaign trail, with Elon Musk speaking at campaign events. So there was a bit of a mandate there. Like, it's not like if you didn't talk about anything at all and then you got in and wanted to do it. Like, no, the people heard that and you won the election. You had the backing of the people on this issue. There was such big talk about how we're going to cut $2 trillion in the first year and nothing's off limits, including the Pentagon. And we're going to have, and look, Doge is a thing that hadn't been tried before. It was headed up by the richest guy in the history of the world, who's like this super genius, guy. And hey, who the hell knows? He had just bought Twitter and rolled back the old regime in this unbelievable power move that like would have been inconceivable. Even when he started doing it, you were like, wait, he's got to free up $44 billion. Like, how the hell could anyone do that? And then he did it. So maybe he could pull something off here. But at the same time, I think we got to be honest with ourselves. It's not even a year later and the whole thing's disbanded. And the cuts are negative. The spending has increased. Not only did they not cut a penny, there's like, we didn't even get we got negative spending cuts. We got spending increases. And for now, there probably was some good in the fact that it exposed some stuff that USAID was doing or something like that. But overall, the mission is a very clear failure. And that's something we all got to grapple with, because reality has a way of existing whether you acknowledge it or not.
Just think about how incredible the storyline is of all right, we got this tech wizard, his name's Big Balls. He's going to comb through all the information like nobody ever has. There's all of this disjointed way that they're doing the budgeting so that no one can track it. We're in month 1 and we found massive fraud. We see money that's just basically being used by the CIA to be sent abroad. We've got Social Security fraud. And then we're not looking into this anymore. Hey, guys, I know that the government's spending too much money, but guess what? I might be able to get it under control if we can just find the fraud. Oh my God, we found so much fraud. You know what? We're going to stop looking at that.
Yep. And look, I mean, that's like you said before, the thing that's been very clear here is that Donald Trump does not, nor has he ever had any real commitment to any type of fiscal sanity or any type, or to really ever drain the swamp. It's just not like Donald Trump. I think it's pretty clear to say at this point, he is not animated by any of the issues that he ran on. It's just not really what animates him. What he is animated by his own greatness and his own legacy. He tells you that himself over and over again. And at a certain point, you know, the old, when someone tells you who they are, you should listen thing. That's essentially who Donald Trump is. All right, let's transition to before we wrap up here, because this was, I thought, was pretty fun. On that theme, when someone tells you who they are, you should listen. And Dave Rubin has been telling you that he's an idiot for many years now. And so you really should listen to him when he tells you that. Dave Rubin, of course, is a guy who, you know, I'm not a big fan of, and he's not a big fan of mine either. If you guys remember earlier in the year, I called him out and challenged him to a debate, and he accepted publicly and then has dodged. You know, I know that Patrick Bet-David tried to set it up. I know Piers Morgan tried to set it up. I think someone else, I think maybe it was Zero Hedge. I think someone else tried to set it up too. He's ghosted all of them and not responded to their requests. So he's not going to do that. But we did get the next best thing, which is that Piers Morgan, who I would like to think that maybe I've played some role in nudging Piers Morgan in the right direction. I've sure done his show enough and made a lot of these arguments, but Piers Morgan sat down with Dave Rubin and they ended up, at least a portion of this. I have not watched more than this clip, which is a little edited up, but I'm assured from a lot of people that Piers really kicked his ass on this part of the show. But so here was Dave Rubin and Piers Morgan arguing over Israel's conduct in Gaza.
You acknowledge that there's been no starvation, correct?
No.
You don't acknowledge
I don't acknowledge that.
Where are the videos and images of the starving Gazans?
Well, I've seen a lot, but you would dismiss them all as fakes. The UN says there was starvation, but you guys don't believe a word the UN says. The other official bodies say there was starvation. You don't want to hear a word they say. Israel denies everything. You can say that no Gazan has starved at all. The reports by almost every official body say the opposite, but you don't believe them. However, the best way to get to the truth is let journalists who are used to covering in war zones, let them go in and do their job, particularly now we have the ceasefire. There is a reason the Israeli government is not letting the media in. They are terrified about what the world will uncover.
I just think that's just...
Well, let them in.
I just think...
There's one way to find out.
A lot of them look fat. They have fresh clothes
I've
and
seen
fresh
lots
haircuts.
of images of Palestinians looking hungry.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't dispute the 20,000 plus children that died, right?
So whose fault is that?
So whose fault is that? Well, probably the people who killed them might have something to do with it. But again, it doesn't just leave you in this, like, for people who are trying to be like, who attempt to like constantly weaponize being offended. Is there anything anyone's ever said that's more horrific than this? Like, and especially, and I'm sorry, Rob, but it is a little bit different if you're talking about something that happened 80 years ago. Like, you know, they all get so worked up over Holocaust denial or something like that. But like, even if somebody's denying the Holocaust, they are denying it 80 years later. Just feels a little bit different than denying it when you can look at the imagery of it. The way Dave Rubin, and genuinely, look, Dave Rubin's genuinely dumb. This isn't a guy who reads. He maybe read the free piece, the free press piece that was like saying, oh, which by the way, it wasn't even saying there's no starvation. If you actually read the piece, it was saying that it's only the kids with pre-existing medical conditions who are really starving the most or something like that. But he's going to sit there and say, like, I don't know, Rob, You've been on social media for the last 2 years. Natalie, I'm sure you've been on social media a bit for the last 2 years. I might be on a little bit more chronically than you two are. How many images of what's going on in Gaza have you seen over the last 2 years? Just horrific. And Dave Rubin characterizes that as the kids all look fat and happy. Really? You don't think it's been a traumatic couple of years for those kids? Like that's, I mean, just, I don't know what is more disgusting than this. These people get morally outraged about other people. It's just too much. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
You know, I have had the thought, because we've seen images of people post-Holocaust that are human skeletons. And we even saw pictures of in Yemen when the starvation was going on, and there were some horrific pictures there. I have seen footage from within Gaza where I'm like, some of these people don't look starving. But then on the same note, we've all clearly seen people getting killed on food lines because they're so hungry, they're willing to be on a food line. And I think Piers certainly frames it well, where he goes, well, every official agency is saying that there's a food problem there. Why are you saying that there isn't? And at first he goes, well, that's just outrageous. And then I guess he basically concedes it and then goes, well, whose fault is it? Which is basically an admission of, well, then that is a problem in the region.
Right. Yeah. It's
almost interesting of Rubin to delve in and go, like, I'm just saying, if you and I were having the argument of there is no food problem in Gaza, we'd probably have the information on that. It wouldn't be from a single image. You would go, oh, actually, there's blank amount of food available. Or you might even have a storyline of how much food is available but has been siphoned off from Hamas. But it's a little bit interesting to just, I guess, position it as fact that nobody's hungry in the area with nothing to back up that claim, and put it on Piers and go, why do you think people are hungry? And he goes, well, every agency's saying that. Why do you think otherwise? And Rubin doesn't really have much of a response. Yeah, I mean, there was that major piece in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, several months back, 3 or 4 months ago. It's a killing field or something like that was the title, where they actually had several IDF soldiers who admitted that they were given orders to shoot into the crowd of shoot live ammunition. I guess people are on food lines for the television optics. It makes Israel look bad, so they just line up every day. They go out there to get shot at, and they don't actually even need the food. Now, to be clear, this was a regular occurrence. This is how they were essentially using crowd control. Is so they would just fire live rounds at the crowd away from the area where they want them to go. And the thing is, they're doing this at night, and people freak out when you start shooting at them. And so a whole bunch of people start running in different directions. A bunch of people got killed. I mean, it was like hundreds and hundreds of people. It might have, I think I read 2,000 people, they said, died this way, died from being killed at the food sites. And yet these people kept coming back. Like, think about how hungry you'd have to be to go. Like, imagine you're waiting on a line for a little bit of food, and then people start firing rounds of live ammunition at you. You'd have to really be pretty food insecure to continue showing up on those lines. Okay. Also, as Piers correctly points out, everybody that looks into everybody, not one word, everybody that looks into this has all concluded that there is starvation in Gaza, and has been for quite a while. So again, Dave Rubin starts with like, but you do accept that there's no starvation. Like, that's only something in your insane Zionist circles that people accept. Wasn't part of the current peace agreement that Israel had to allow aid back in? Yes. So isn't that a United States admission of the fact that I guess aid is needed? Dude, they had a full blockade for 3 months where they let nothing through. And their finance minister, Smotrich, openly bragged that not one grain of wheat will enter Gaza. And it didn't. They did it for 3 months after almost 2 years of destroying the place. Yeah, this is totally uncontroversial. So anyway, to him, it's just a hoax that we've been led to believe that there isn't enough food resources in Gaza. Israel never did nothing. That's what Dave Rubin. I'm going to guess all the buildings are still there too. Yeah, that's what gay baby thief Dave Rubin would have you believe. There's just nothing Israel's ever done wrong. All right, let's keep playing.
The 20,000 plus children have died, right?
So whose fault is that? I mean,
you don't honestly think that life for a young Palestinian kid in Gaza in the last 2 years has been anything but utter helldy. I do believe the 3-month blockade earlier this year was a criminal blockade. I believe it was deliberate starvation of the people, deliberately denying them food and aid. If you
has any other country in the history of the world been told to feed the people that are killing it?
If you look at the Geneva Convention, actually, then no other country in the world has had the control that Israel has over Gaza.
Just pause it for a second.
Right? Which again is a whole separate.
Dude, by the way, can I just say, but Dave Rubin, what happened with me and him was that Dave Rubin like publicly was just insulting me and like called me a moron and said, I don't know what I'm talking about. So then I challenged him and I was like, hey, why don't we debate? We'll see who's a moron and doesn't know what they're talking about. And then I went, but you're too much of a coward, so you won't do it. So then he went, I'm not a coward, I will do it. And then he just refused to do it. He played that well. That was the best way to like, that was very wise of Dave Rubin to not show up. Can you imagine him coming and debating me with like, this is actually what he's got. It's like how pathetic the line of argument, which goes, oh, well, you expect Israel to feed the people that they're at war with? We don't really expect that of other people. By the way, Konstantin did try to make this argument to me on trigonometry at one point. He was a nice guy about it. So I just said, but like he goes, well, we don't expect Russia to feed Ukraine. And I went, yeah, but Russia doesn't have a blockade around Ukraine. There's never been an issue getting aid into Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine has received more aid over the last 3 years than any country in the world. So like, yeah, it's kind of different. And like, yes, the right. It is funny because they'll bring this up as if it's like a gotcha. Oh, see, you have a double standard against Israel, when actually, Rob, what is it? It's like, oh, yes, because you've occupied these people for 60 years and you have a full blockade around the country. That's why there's a responsibility on you. By the way, not to feed Gaza. That's not what anyone's asking Israel to do. What they're asking them to do is allow the international aid through. The world has sent aid to Gaza. It's waiting outside of Gaza, and the IDF won't let it in. So I don't know what, again, Dave Rubin doesn't know any of this because he just doesn't know anything, but what a ridiculous defense. Yeah, let's keep playing.
Issue. Show me another moment in the 75-year conflict where the response has been to kill 60 times as many people, and where you have well, hang on, let me finish. Where you have a government with people like Smodrich and Ben-Gvir who begin publicly, openly talking about ethnically cleansing all the Palestinians from Gaza, about annexing the West Bank, about taking complete control of all of it, to the point that Donald Trump had to step in and say that is not happening.
Random ministers
well, they're not random ministers.
About,
they're not the two of the most senior people in the government.
No, but them talking about things is different. I mean,
I hear that a lot. Well, my point is this. You have a unique population in Gaza where half of them are under 18. There is a unique proportion of kids in this part of the world, right? So at what point do you try and find a different way to resolve this? The only solution that seemed to be being offered by Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smodrich, and the others was to raise Gaza to the floor and to expel all Palestinians. So Netanyahu would annex West Bank tomorrow.
He's been in power for 20-something years. He could have done it at any point. Notice he hasn't. I mean, no, but there's a couple things here. I mean, first off, I don't think any country in the world has ever been asked to feed the people that are holding its hostage, right? Mm-hmm. Like, have you ever called for any other country to do that, or anyone?
Well, okay,
has anyone ever called for that?
Well, British prisoners of war in World War II were fed.
Yeah. But
what's the difference?
What?
Prisoners of war in World War II were fed. So what's the difference?
Because they were holding hostages. They're holding their people. I mean, to me, it seems that you as a British
people
citizen,
being held hostage in the Israeli government, which is a hard right government. Smodrich and Ben-Gvir are not just right wing; they're absolute far right headbangers.
But meaning what? Meaning what? They have.
Meaning what? They want to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people.
Listen, we can of this. It is. It's fun to watch Dave Rubin get destroyed like this. But it really is also. It just. I don't know. It just reveals something, man. It's just like such a. It's amazing how human beings can take such evil positions with such a superficial understanding of like what's going on at all, and then just like explain away the word. I mean, like it's so obvious there when you look at it that it's just no matter what it is that they throw at you, you're gonna go, okay, I'll explain that away. Oh, here's Ben-Gvir and Smotrich openly saying that their plan is ethnic cleansing. Oh, random ministers. Random ministers? You mean defense and finance? He said it almost like it was like a random pastor at a church or something like that. Oh, a random minister made that comment. What? It's like the two of the three most powerful people in the government. I believe the two most powerful. I think it's Katz, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, Netanyahu. Who's more powerful in the government than that? It's just no matter what. Oh, here's all the reports of starvation. Nah, that ain't true. Here's all it's just the. It's a very weird thing to me to be like, as a human being, you could get to a level where you're just defending such blatant evil with no knowledge. I don't know. Final word to you, Rob.
Check out Run Your Mouth. I got Kyle Anzalone coming on today for a full briefing of everything going on in the geopolitics, the supposed end to the Russia-Ukraine war, Venezuela, money being sent to terrorists from Minnesota money, getting into all this stuff. And then live dates out in Denver. You can go to robbernsteincomedy.com, click the links, but then go with the Eventbrites. My whole life's retarded, and they're listed wrong on my website, and I can't correct it. But that's about it. Come hang out, enjoy your Thanksgiving, eat some turkey. Think of me when you have your sandwich. It's like we're hanging out.
There you go. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And of course, I'll be off for the month of December from traveling. The show, of course, will go on. But 2026, me and Rob will be together on the road.
You already got dates up. You got Portland up. You've got Key West. We're going back there. That's going to be a blast. Philly, yeah.
Philly, and then I think there's one other. Yeah, I think there's a few. ComicDaveSmith.com, and then there should be a bunch more up within the next week or so.
By the way,
thanks for listening, everybody. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Philly room rules, and we sold out all the shows last year, so don't sleep on your tickets. Same with Portland. We did a theater last time, nearly sold that out, and that was like 2 years ago. So don't wait on your tickets for Portland. Yeah. And then Key West, if you can take a vacation, that's one of the funnest places in the country to be out roaming around and drinking. So I do recommend.
We're literally just going back because we had so much fun there last year. But yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Happy Thanksgiving. Catch you guys next time. Peace. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How you feeling today? Out on your living a nice porch life. This is Rob. He is just always on a porch where he's doing shows.
This is me training at home for Arizona this Sunday. Then next weekend I've got Long Island, Omaha, Nebraska, Kansas City. Then I think I got a weekend with you. And then I'm out west. So go to porchstore.com and Comic Dave Smith for all the Comic Dave Smith dates.
Yes, that's right. We got a bunch of dates coming up. So I know we're in Dallas, Fort Worth, Detroit, Tampa, Poughkeepsie. Got a bunch of stuff coming up for the rest of the year. ComicDaveSmith.com for all of those ticket links. All right, let's get into some stuff today. And obviously we're gonna start this by continuing to talk about the wake, the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination. I am honestly, I personally, just to check in with me, I'm doing much better than I was a few days ago. As I've been, pretty open with you guys. I've been pretty rattled over this situation. I gotta say, I'm thrilled beyond words by the fact that, like, at least so far, there hasn't been like violence and retaliation that's kicked off, because I really was concerned about that. I mean, for like that to me was like the major thing when it first happened. I mean, obviously, like, the first is like the human level, is a guy I knew and the kind of tragedy for his family. But pretty immediately after that, you're like, oh man, like, he was beloved by so many millions of people and they're going to be so angry. And this is just a recipe for disaster. And that, at least so far, hasn't happened. And I'm really grateful to all of the public figures who have kind of been urging calm through this whole thing, and there's been a lot of that, and that I think that is really important. And so, man, at least thank God for that. In a sea of kind of a tragic event, at least there is the silver lining that I think in some way you could say, like, the Christianity in Charlie's message may have have calmed that situation down, and just I'm really glad to see that, because man, that could have gone in such a bad direction. Now, again, not to say things still can't happen, but at least through several days, or what has it been now, a week or something, we haven't seen anything like that. So that's pretty great. We'll just start by saying that. Okay. I got to address this because I was not exactly aware, but I did see like a few people on Twitter were telling me to go check the comment section of our episode from yesterday. Ooh,
Usually they're nice. They tell us how wise we are, that you should run for president, but not on the last episode.
It's we got a mutiny on our hands on the YouTube comment section over the last episode. And look, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think when I'm saying I'm sitting here saying, look, I don't see any evidence to believe that this is an Israeli conspiracy, that Israel was involved in Charlie Kirk's assassination. And in response, overwhelmingly, I just saw people posting. Well, they posted
the chat.
Well, that was one assumption, but then a bunch of people were just like going like, did he even read the Max Blumenthal article? And I'm like, yeah, like, did you catch the line in it where he said there's no evidence that Israel was involved in the assassination? Like, I think that was a very relevant part where it backed up my claim. Look, anyway, I'll just say this. I'm not, very rarely, I don't think ever quite like this one, have I seen like a mutiny within my show's comment section. So I want to like pay attention to that. And if my audience is not happy with what I was saying on the last episode, okay. At the same time, I'm not going to be the guy who stops saying what I think is true because I think it might anger my own audience. And I would hope that you would appreciate that about me. I did not get a phone call. I have not been threatened. There seems to be a lot of speculation of that. I promise you, on every faith that you've ever had in me telling you the truth, I have not gotten any phone calls or been threatened. By the way, I've gotten some phone calls before in my day where I think I kind of got the phone call, but not here, and certainly not in this situation, not relevant to this. That's a topic for another day. But what a lot of people are picking up on, I guess, is there's just so many people speculating about this, but they're like, look at Dave. You can see he's rattled. Like, clearly he's scared to say this. Clearly they've gotten to him. Guys, I assure you, a guy I know just got publicly executed. Yes, I'm a little rattled by that situation. That's the extent of it. And I really say this only because, as I've always said to you guys, my job is to tell the truth. And if I see people in my own comment section going, ooh, I'm thinking that this is what's going on here, or this is what's going on, and I, being me, having the advantage, know for a fact that is not true, I'm going to try to steer you away from that because I just don't think that's right. Now, that being said, I don't really know what else we can say here other than, in terms of the Israel done it idea, if you just want to believe that, fine. Look, what am I in the business of protecting Israel's image or something here? And all the people speculating, oh, maybe Dave's not going to go hard at Israel anymore. It's like, give that one a couple weeks. Give that theory a couple weeks and come back to me and see if I'm softening my rhetoric or message about Israel at all. Spoiler alert, no plans to do that.
I just want to say, if someone has the talk and I'm not included, I'm going to be offended. I'd like to think that my contribution is enough on the show to be threatened as well.
That you would be included in the talk? That's all you really want, is you want to be like, you figure you'd be like...
I'd like to think I've made enough of an impact that I might
think that's fair. I think you should be CC'd on the email for sure, if nothing else. But I did have a thought reading the comments
because I do waste too much time reading our show comments. Even on the attempt on Donald Trump's life, a couple months later, I was speculating, was that Israel that made that attempt, because it was very odd how quickly Trump seemed to embrace Netanyahu afterwards, and how pro-Israel the administration has been. So I did kind of a thought where I was like, I kind of done the same thing with no evidence of speculating who might have had an incentive there. I think in this case, though, it's very reasonable 2 days after it happened, when people are saying it was definitively Israel without any evidence, to be like, well, what is the evidence of that charge? And most of what I've heard thus far is, well, It was reported that he had that firstly Netanyahu wanted to give him, hundreds of millions of dollars or $100 million. He turned it down. There's no, for the same people who are demanding evidence from other people, where do you have direct evidence of the fact that sit down never happened? In terms of an Ackman meeting, I mean, how aggressive are donors usually about topics? I'm sure we're going to get into that. But then
we'll get into all this.
The claim that Charlie was certainly changing his perspective. It's possible. And there might even be some clips to showcase that. I think you're going to be able to speak to that more. But on the last one, which is that he feared for his life, I rewatched the Tim Dillon thing, and it's one claim secondhand from the Gray Zone guy of something he heard from InfoWars.
No, it's the Harrison Smith, I believe his name is, from InfoWars. He made that public. So that's not even just Max Blumenthal saying that. Like, he tweeted that.
But it's one
guy at InfoWars.
How definitive proof is it that someone at InfoWars makes a claim about a conversation that they weren't at? I don't know. That's not the end all of proof.
With all of these things, man, you just have to be skeptical, and you have to be like discerning if you really want to get to the bottom of it. But I will say, look, to the audience who's upset about this, look, you find me some evidence, I will happily take a look at it. As of right now, I'm seeing nothing. But that being said, we could almost even agree to disagree on this. You've made up your mind. It's Israel. Okay, you decided that. That I'm never going to be the guy. And look, just think about it like this, Rob. This is the thing that gets to me, that is a bit I don't know, strange. But so, of the two people, specifically the two people who I called out, which were Ian Carroll and Max Blumenthal. So I'm sitting here saying there's no evidence for this. People are sending me Max Blumenthal's article. In the article, he himself says, we have no evidence for this. Okay? So that's one point. Number two, Ian Carroll, which I also just saw this after we recorded yesterday. I thought he just didn't respond. But then someone sent me the clip where Ian Carroll, in response to what I said, yeah, Dave's right. I got a little out ahead of my skis, a little over my skis there. And he probably had a more level-headed response than me. I shouldn't have said, we knew this with certainty. So both the people there are agreeing with me. Even your guys who you're pointing me to are still saying the same thing I've said. By the way, Candace Owens, we're going to get into that too. She's also saying, I don't know, you know what I mean? Evidence that Israel did this. But there is, so let's talk about this, because here's something, and I think maybe the people who disagree with me on this, we're going to have to agree to disagree for now. I am not at all telling you to believe the government's narrative. In fact, I believe I said on the show yesterday that the one thing we can count on with certainty is that the government will be shady and dishonest. And clearly already everyone's attempting to manipulate the situation toward their own ends. But if you want to already agree, that fine. I'm saying my position on this is I see no evidence that Israel assassinated Charlie Kirk. I'm open to it if anyone produces any. I don't trust the government. There are some things in the official story at this point that I would say are not quite adding up, and we'll see what more information we can get. Let's talk a little bit about Candace Owens' episode, because Candace Owens, so she went live last night.
Can I say one other thing about
sure, go
evidence?
ahead.
Firstly, everything is circumstantial evidence of that Israel might have had a motive to do it. There is no circumstantial evidence of the actual crime of killing Charlie by Israel. Secondly, I listen, the audience is large and mighty, and we're lucky to have them here. So I'm not I can't call the collective audience wrong, or particularly in the comments for being wrong. But I guess I have a different opinion on this, where sometimes on the show where you state, I'm not there yet, I'm agnostic on this, I haven't seen enough evidence of this, to just say I'd like to see a little bit more before that claim, and then the audience hops on with how dare you not have a firm perspective yet. It's if you're being honest about what you've read or seen or where your perspective is, it's crazy to be how come you don't have more certainty on something?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But I will say so Candace does this episode last night. And first off, it was incredible, I thought. And it was first of all, it was difficult to watch, partially just because I love Candace, and she is so clearly really grieving for someone who is a brother to her. She's in pain over having lost someone so close to her, and that kind of came through. And then anyway, there's but the numbers were insane. So I've never seen anything like it before. I don't know that I've ever seen on YouTube where she was so I was watching it. I don't know what time it was, like yesterday evening. But so I'm like, it was live streaming. So I was watching it, but I was like a little behind the live stream. And then I was doing a few things. Like I think I was putting one of the kids to bed and then like making a sandwich or whatever. So I'm like doing other things and then I'd come back to it. So I was watching it live, but like behind the live stream. And then when I got back to it, it wasn't a live stream anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like the live stream had ended and I was watching the video. And so when I just remember when I was on, I think it was 300,000 people were watching live when I was on the live stream. And then when I came back to it, I mean, the live stream had just ended and it was like over 1 million. Like it was like, it was, I think it's up to like 5 million last I checked or something like that. It was just breaking the goddamn internet. I mean, it's like huge show. And there was something so compelling about it. It was like, hearing from Charlie Kirk's dear friend, who was the one who broke off from the Daily Wire and all of that. It was just very interesting. And so she's talking about, which is a whole different almost element of, I don't know, of a theory here, where like, if you narrow this down a little bit, right? Like I'm saying, I don't see any evidence pointing in the direction that Israel did this. However, a separate question, which you can connect to that if you want to. I just want to be clear that I'm not connecting to that because I don't see a reason to, or a clear piece of evidence to. But there are the claims being made, Benjamin Netanyahu himself trying to milk Charlie Kirk's death. And now there are other claims being made about what Charlie Kirk's state of mind was about Israel during that time. And that in itself is an interesting question. And Candace, in this episode, she did at one point call on me and Tucker Carlson to come forward with whatever information we have. She was saying we were both at this last event. So like, what was it like? What was his state of mind? What were the things being said? And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And I'm thinking, and so I thought maybe the best I could do here as a response to the audience being upset about the last episode is like, I'll just come clean with everything I know, including like some fucking text messages between me and Charlie Kirk, which I figured there were a couple that I thought were kind of relative. So after listening to the Candace episode, I thought about it and I was like, almost like trying to replay in my mind, like what exactly was said when we were hanging out in that green room. Because we did hang out for quite a bit before the debate. And the truth is, there was nothing I could say tangibly about that encounter like demonstrated that Charlie was changing his mind about Israel or something like that. He was very friendly the entire time. I was me. And so I was, at first, what happened was first I went in there and it was just me and Charlie and his guy. I'm blanking on his name right now. I apologize, but he's the guy who's like on his podcast. So it was them two, and then Josh Hammer came in, and it was like all of us for a little bit, and then Charlie's buddy left, and it was just me, Charlie, and Josh for a little bit. And so at the beginning, before Josh Hammer came in, we did talk about Israel a little bit, and I was needling Charlie, like I tend to do in those situations, like because he was already talking about we started talking about issues right away. He was saying like, but everything he was saying was kind of like what you would think Charlie Kirk would be saying in that situation. He was saying things like, he goes, look, I'm with you. I'm against the forever wars and I can't stand the McCains and the Cheneys and all those guys. And then I was going, yeah, Charlie, but like, right? Like I was just like, Charlie was a well-read guy enough that I would just be like, but you already know who the neocons are married at the hip to, right? Like, what was that all about? Or don't you know that they're basically just the American Likud party? Like, that, right? And it was Charlie Kirk. He would just kind of disarm you with his kindness. Like, he would kind of laugh, and then he'd look around with a big smile, and he'd go, I get your point. And then he'd pivot to he'd be like, I just really, like, as a Christian, I had really spiritual experiences when I went to Israel and stood in the exact place where Jesus performed miracles and all this. And I really value the holy sites being protected and the bond between, the Jewish people, like Jesus was a Jew and like all that. And I was like, okay, I get all of that. But like, also we could do that without genociding our neighbors, right? Probably. And he'd kind of laugh and say, now, if I'm being completely honest, I got the impression that Charlie really kind of knew I was right. If I'm being completely honest, that's how I felt. But I got nothing tangible I could point to justify that feeling. All I could tell you is that in the room, I kind of felt like he knows I got a really good point here, but he's kind of not in a position where he can admit it. That's how I felt. But that is purely just a vibe I got. There was nothing he said that actually backed up that was his feeling. And then when Josh Hammer came in, I don't even remember. I remember at one point he was like interested in talking to me about like how I'm good on borders and abortion and most libertarians are bad on that. And then we got into a whole conversation about how libertarian first principles lead you to not being for open borders. And it was just like other stuff that wasn't that topic. It was kind of like a thing where Charlie had been saying, and I think I talked about this the week we did a podcast with like my thoughts on the event right after the event, but once Josh Hammer came in the room, Charlie had been stressing the whole time how he really wanted a good faith exchange of ideas. And he didn't want this to devolve into name calling or be anything, and that he really wanted to have a good, honest exchange between me and Josh. And so I said yes, and Josh said the same thing. Josh said absolutely yes. And so then we all the three of us had a very pleasant conversation, and we ended up talking about other topics. And I think part of that was just like, to keep it light and friendly in the green room. Like, we're about to go out there and debate this topic, so let's just talk about immigration, where we all agree for a little bit before we go out there. Then, as I pointed out before, Josh Hammer goes out, and by the end of his opening statement, he said he was disgusted to be on the stage with me. And I had pointed out like what a snake behavior that was, because literally we had just had like a 40-minute pleasant conversation. Like, we were all being friends. And then he got out there and said he was disgusted to be in my presence or whatever. Anyway, then I wiped the floor with Josh Hammer, and that's how the thing ended. So I didn't really have anything, when Candace was like, come forward with whatever information you have. I was just, as I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't really have anything there. But then I did think to myself, I was like, oh, like me and Charlie Kirk have texted a fair amount of times over the years. Like, let me go back and just see what we said exactly. Because I remember he had gone out of his way to like text nice stuff. And I said this publicly before too, that was our relationship essentially, that he just started reaching out to me. I had done his podcast a time or two, I believe. And he would just text me like nice things before, and then he invited me to that Turning Point event. So I will say, first of all, very weird feeling going back through the text messages of someone when they just died. Just there's something about that's kind of surreal and not a nice feeling. But I did that, and then I did find a couple text messages that I think are kind of relevant to this part of the conversation. I just want to make it clear, I'm not stoking anything that says Israel did it, but just if we're having the conversation about where was Charlie's state of mind and how did he feel about Israel, these are, I think, kind of relevant. And let me just start by saying this, because I was a little torn about whether or not I should read these. I've never done that before. I've never read private text messages or released, like when people do that sometimes when they're arguing with someone, like they'll release screenshots of DMs or something like that. I never have done that in my life, or I don't think so. And I don't like that. I think like that, like things that are said privately should stay private. But just like in this case, it does seem like this is like, I don't know, it's like the biggest political assassination of our lifetimes. And this is a huge debate over where his state of mind was. And I do think that a lot of the fucking Zionists are kind of lying when they act like, no, Charlie was just the biggest, like he was just Ben Shapiro and nothing else was going on in his head. That doesn't seem to be quite right. Now, I've talked about this quite a bit, that I thought the big dynamic going on here was that he still needed these kids. He still needed his young activists, and they were abandoning Israel. But I actually forgot about exactly what he said in a couple of these things. So I'll read them. just to be fully transparent, you guys can make of it what you will. I think I already know what a lot of you are going to make of it, but this is real, and this is what was said to me. So, here, let me, because I took a couple screenshots of these, but let me just actually read up through them, because these are the ones that I thought were relevant. I mean, there's some other texts here where it's just, you know, I mean, he texted me saying he really loved my testimony on Tucker Carlson about praying to God in the hospital when my daughter was born and stuff, but this just doesn't seem as relevant. But these two texts I thought were pretty relevant. So this one is from Sunday, April 13th at 8:01 p.m. He texts me, "Listen to you on Rogan." Now, this is like a day or two after the Douglas Murray debate. So I debated Douglas Murray on the Joe Rogan Experience, and it was a big show. At the time, it was a big show. I guess Candace Owens changed the definition of big show at this point. In hindsight, a teeny little show. So this was Charlie Kirk, unprompted, texted me about the Douglas Murray debate. Now, just like kind of keeping in mind, and I'll fully disclaim here, Charlie Kirk's a really nice guy. You could chalk a lot of this up to him being nice, but the Douglas Murray debate with me, you know, like, I'm not overstating it. This was like a big thing. This may have been the biggest high profile debate on Israel. And this is what Charlie Kirk wrote to me Sunday, April 13th at 8:01 p.m. "Listen to you on Rogan. You did well, despite me being more on the pro-Israel side. Very little I disagree with what you said. One point, when Douglas was going on about you using arguments from authority, it's a ridiculous claim. You were using original source quotes to prove their motives, all capital and motives, not their analysis of geopolitics, etc. Two totally different things. You were right on that point 100%. Keep up the good work. Hope to cross paths at some point soon." I'm sorry, hope to cross paths at some point. And I wrote back, "Thanks, Charlie. I really appreciate that." Now, again, I'm not saying anyone should make any more of this than there is there, but like, this is Charlie Kirk. He told me privately that there was very little that he disagreed with. And if you go listen to what I said on that show, I was going pretty hard. And so I will say, like, you know, Candace calling on me to like release what I know, that is one. And I think that's not completely insignificant. Like, I think that does at least demonstrate that this wasn't Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was not sending me this text message. Let's just say that. You know, I mean, I don't want anyone to make too much of this. Here's the other one that I thought was kind of worth what. So he sent me like a tweet that he had posted, which was back about here. So this is public, right? So you can see this, but he sent it to me. So he quote tweeted me a post that I had about the murder of those two Israeli embassy staff members. If you remember that, Rob, you remember that story? They got murdered in DC or something like that. And I just had a post about, like, you know, how wrong political violence is and how anyone who thinks you're helping the poor Palestinians by murdering some embassy workers, you're not. And then Charlie had a long quote tweet to that, which this is public. If you want to find it, it starts with their names, which were Sarah Milgram and Yuran Lichinsky. And he says they were two beautiful young people with their whole lives ahead of them. Talks about how the murder was senseless and evil and horrifying. It's a little bizarre to read that in the context of today, but then he had a whole section of the post where he said, "I must push back against one thing. All over X, I see claims that some people have, quote, blood on their hands." By the way, this is just a really interesting tweet. I haven't read this till right now. I didn't click on it. But he sent me it in our text thread. But this is Charlie Kirk, by the way, talking about this stuff, pretty relevant to today. He said, "I must push back against one thing. All over X, I see claims that some people have, quote, blood on their hands simply because they've made tweets attacking Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israel government, or the war in Gaza. No, And then he goes off on a whole thing. You can look up the tweet if you want to say it, but he's making the point that it was horrible what happened to them, but it's also messed up to like blame anybody who was criticizing Israel for now being responsible for them doing this. So he sent me that tweet, and I responded back as he sent me this at noon on May 22nd, and I responded back at 12:01. I said, I was literally reading it as you texted. And I said, thank you. I really appreciate that. We need cooler heads to prevail here. It's a very dangerous situation. And he said, totally. And then he said, we should do a podcast in person and have a fun, lighthearted, contrasting conversation on Israel. I bet we actually agree on most of it. Truly. I will. And then he said, I will not scold you for not being. So he made a never been joke. And then I said, I'm going to need that in writing. And then he said, screenshot it. And okay, I didn't actually plan on screenshotting that or reading that aloud ever at any point. So look, that's all I have. That's all that I actually know about any of this. The truth is that all of the kind of stuff that Candace is talking about, all of this coming to a head, the pressure being put on Charlie Kirk doing that interview with Megyn Kelly talking about the pressure, all this stuff about like the meeting with Ackman and all these guys. This all happens after that, and I never talked to Charlie again, which I really regret in hindsight. But that happens a lot when we lose people. But I hadn't talked to him. It hasn't been that long. This was only in the last couple of months. So I can't speak to any of that. But I did feel like it was worth pointing that out, that, again, this doesn't prove anything at all. Charlie was a really nice guy. And I know this from just having met him, the one time in person and then other times like over the computer. And so maybe he was just trying to be nice and extend an olive branch and kind of keep like a dialogue going there. I mean, this is Charlie Kirk, and that is kind of what he was all about, is keeping dialogue going. And even when he was inviting me on his podcast, so by the way, the story there is that never ended up happening. But so then essentially what happened was he goes, why don't you come on my podcast? The invite I just read you. I was like, absolutely, let's do it. Then he was like, oh, do you want to do a debate at this big event that we're having coming up here? And then I was like, okay, cool. So we'll do that. And then he was like, okay, we'll kill two birds with one stone, and we'll do the debate, and me and you will do a podcast. That was the original plan. And then like, I couldn't come in till the last day of the conference. We were out in Denver that weekend, and I had to fly from Denver straight down there. And there wasn't enough time to do both, I guess, or something like that. So like the podcast didn't end up happening. But so even when he was inviting me on that podcast, he's saying like, we disagree, you know what I mean? But he's also going, I think you'd be surprised by how much we agree. And on the Douglas Murray podcast, he's saying, I think I actually agreed with much of what you had to say. So anyway, that's my response to Candace. That's all I got. I don't have any other useful information that's relevant to here, but at least the little bit I have, I think does indicate that, like, yeah, there was certainly, Charlie was at the very least, at least what he's saying here, is that he was listening to, obviously he was listening to what I had to say. Obviously he had been listening to what Candace had to say. Obviously he had been listening to what Tucker had to say. And he probably was feeling like, a lot of that does make sense. That doesn't mean he agrees with it fully, but I would offer that to say, I do think there is some evidence that Charlie was struggling with this topic, thinking about this topic, finding some common ground with the very harsh critics of Israel, and was at the very least, like, it's not the case that this guy was just a pure loyal supporter who wasn't questioning the thing at all. I will say that much. Any thoughts on any of this, Rob?
So Israel did do it. That's what I just learned.
There you go.
After all these assassination attempts that country's already made, Dave Smith confirms.
Listen, I can't confirm it. They already got to me. Now, listen, dude, I promise you guys, by the way, if I'm ever like threatened or spooked or something like that, I won't like lie to you. Maybe I won't answer the question, but I won't just lie to you. No, I have not gotten the call. I have not been threatened. And no, I don't fear for my safety, really. I mean, any more than just, the way that anyone else would fear for myself. Like, you're like, shit, Charlie Kirk got taken out. I hope more people don't. I don't know. I'm in a much more controlled environment. I don't really do big outdoor events like that, which are less controlled. But no, I'm not like, I'm not like worried to say what the truth is here. I'm just trying to not rush to judgment and trying to get it right. But anyway, I did think, as Candace asked about that, I was like, I sent her those screenshots too, because I was just kind of like, well, look, in the effort to like, let's get to the bottom of all of this here, I'm happy to, I won't voluntarily give over information to the government, but I'll voluntarily give it over to Candace Owens anytime. So I was like, here, look, I don't think, Charlie was much closer with Candace than he was with me. So I don't think he was saying anything to me that like he didn't trust her with. And I also did feel like, hey, this is somewhat relevant. It's not like he was telling me stuff about like his marriage or something and I'm like revealing personal things. It's like, this is the topic of conversation now, is where was this guy here? I have not like a huge smoking gun or anything like that, but like I have a little bit of evidence of what his state of mind was. So I felt like it was the right move to share that.
I listened to quite a bit of the Candace thing, and I will say I'd like to see. I'm not saying any of it's wrong. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying any of it's wrong. I'd like to see a little bit more receipts on the accusations, such as that Ackman threatened or that Netanyahu.
Well, did you see Ackman
funds.
responded?
I think he responded that he had receipts and he was going to show them, and he hasn't done so yet.
Yeah, but even just that, I thought was kind of great in a way. Like, I just think it's great that Candace got him on the record, because now it's kind of like, okay, yeah, get him talking more and more. Because now let's see, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, let's try to put together the story here. Like, I don't know exactly what I'll say this, right? And I kind of, I think I talked all about this in our episodes. Anyone can go back if you want to. We did, I think, an entire episode on my experience at that turning point debate and what it was like. Now, at the time, we were just talking about how the kids were moved in such a direction and what the debate was like and stuff. But I'll just say this, because so Josh Hammer now, who happens to be the guy who was there for part of the time when the only time I ever met Charlie Kirk face to face. So now I debated Josh Hammer at Princeton University. What was that? Last year, I think. Or was it earlier this year? I can't remember.
I think it was during the winter, because I was going to go and then there was a crazy snowstorm.
It was 100% during the winter, because I left into a crazy snowstorm and my Uber kept canceling on me and I really had a moment. Yeah, it sucked. But anyway, yes, I finally got in a car. Anyway, yes, it was definitely in the winter. Okay, so I debated Josh Hammer at Princeton, smoked him, and but it was a totally like a civil debate. I mean, he did that one thing where he tried to be like, who do you trust Osama bin Laden more than Benjamin Netanyahu or something? But like, aside from that, it was just a civil debate where we just calmly debated the issues, which it actually is what I prefer in these debates, despite how many shit shows I've been a part of. I actually like when we could just argue the issues in like an academic, setting. And anyway, so that was, it went great for me. And I was very happy with it, but I left that thinking Josh was nothing but a good dude. And at the end of the debate, I went over to him and I said something like, I was like, hey man, we should let's do a podcast together sometime about some stuff we agree on, like immigration or wokeism or something like that. And he went, yeah, absolutely. And we left kind of on cordial, nice terms. Then Josh was so what Charlie was at first, he said, we'll do the podcast. Then he was like, why don't you come do a debate? Then he wanted me to debate, what's his name? Oh man, I'm blanking on his name. But he's the UFC guy who was in the military. Tim Kennedy. He wanted me to debate Tim Kennedy, and I accepted that. I went okay, and I'm an MMA fan, so I was always like a fan of Tim Kennedy. So I was like, okay, I'll debate Tim Kennedy. I think that could be a good one. And then Tim couldn't do it for like scheduling reasons or something like that. And he goes, well, what do you think about Josh Hammer? And I initially said no to Charlie on that, because in my mind I was like, well, I don't know. I already debated that guy. And that's been dealt with. Like, give me a new, person because it's hard to like kind of get excited about just doing the same thing that you already did. And And then Charlie Kirk was like, yeah, dude, but this is going to be in front of the Turning Point audience at our biggest event of the year. And this is going to just be much bigger numbers. And a lot of other people will see this. And then when he said that, I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I guess like that. Yeah, it makes sense. And these are really the people I want to talk to, are like the young people. So that's, so that I was just like, okay, yeah, we'll come do this. And that's how that. So anyway, so I was like, whatever. Then he started stressing. He put us all three of us on a text message, and he just started stressing. Like, if you could read that text message, the entire thread was just him going like, okay, guys, here are the topics I want to cover. And I was like, sure, sounds good. And then he goes, I really want this to be a good faith thing and like above board and no insults. And then Josh went, absolutely. That's what I want to. And then I just said, with certainty, because we had already had such a good faith debate the first time, I went, dude, you don't got to worry about that with me and Josh. Everything will be cool, blah, blah, blah. And then we just hung out in the green room. Like I said, he was the nicest guy the whole time. We're like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to have a friendly debate. And his opening statement before I've spoken was, I'm disgusted to be on stage with Dave, and reading my text message. Like, he pulls out this thing. And so anyway, all I'm saying is that I just went, oh, that dude's a snake. He's a really dishonest fucking person who's very comfortable lying. And I just couldn't imagine. I could imagine being pissed off at someone, but I couldn't imagine sitting there with someone being nothing but polite and cordial and joking around, talking about family, talking about politics, talking about all this stuff, and then getting on stage and going, I'm disgusted to be in this man's presence. Like, there's something that's very dishonest and womanly about that. And so when it comes out that Josh Hammer was also at this meeting, I'll just say, I don't trust him for shit that he says. About that. That's all. No, that debate was the one in the summer, was the second debate. But anyway, so that's all I'll say, is that guy's a liar. So I don't trust his words there. Bill Ackman, I'm not trusting what he says either. So the more you get him talking about it, the more like he's on the record saying this. This is like why in a police investigation, they go, why don't you come downtown and answer some questions? Like, before they've even got anything, they want to get more, because now if you say anything that's a lie, we can look into that. We can see what you're trying to cover up. So I thought it was great that she got him responding. Now, look, what was really the deal there? I don't know. The other thing that I will say, which is I have seen confirmed by more sources. Now, again, this is not the thing, because it's important to remember all these things. The claim that Charlie believed Israel was going to kill him is, we're relying on one guy at InfoWars from that. And like, forgive me, all right, whatever the internet comments, you can all, yes, I got the call, but I'm going to need a little bit more than that. And sorry. And I know that everybody like has the view of InfoWars that like Alex Jones was right about everything, but he was actually wrong about a whole lot of things. And I'm sorry, but when you work at an organization that is known for making wild claims that you cannot possibly back up, Alex Jones literally made documentaries about how they were going to start depopulating the earth. Like, it's 25 years ago, still hasn't happened. So I guess it's coming, but that's okay. There's one source, but the idea that the idea that he turned down a big chunk of money from Netanyahu is not just one source. There are several people who are saying this is the case. That is an interesting wrinkle in the story. Again, I'm not arguing, none of this proves that Israel did it, but it is interesting to establish. And look, not just because it's not just because of the fact that people are thinking about this conspiracy theory. Although I think that's just going to happen no matter what any of us say. That's fine. But it's not just that. It's also that, Charlie Kirk was a really important figure. There is something about when people die young, it just has an impact on all of us. We all lionize people who die young. The truth is that Martin Luther King and JFK were not nearly the perfect angels that our society makes them out to be. They were both deeply flawed human beings with deep personal failings. They weren't angels, but they did die young. And when you die young, you get lionized. And who you were as a person, what your legacy is, what you're remembered as, becomes very important. And that's part of the reason why you see Netanyahu trying to use this right away. Here's an image of Charlie Kirk with Israel. You associate all the feelings you have with Charlie Kirk with the Israeli flag. You know what I mean? Like, people try to use that. And if there is this like discussion of what the man really was or what he really stood for, then like I think this stuff is important. It's important to know what really was going on. And what, you know, when Candace says that she knows for a fact that Netanyahu is blatantly lying by omission when he read that letter that Charlie had written to him, I believe her on that. And I do believe that I think it's unlikely that Charlie Kirk was expressing to me having doubts or expressing to me agreeing with much of what I'm saying, which, like, Jesus, I mean, I go pretty hard on this stuff. If you're agreeing with much of what I'm saying, then you're having doubts about the pro-Israel side. And it does seem to me to be like there's a strong case for that. Now, Candace is talking about a meeting where she was not there, from what I understand. Bill Ackman is saying, no, it wasn't like that at all. This wasn't like a contentious thing. It wasn't an intervention. We discussed lots of issues. I do also, you know, the thing that lends a lot of credibility to what Candace was saying, in my view here, is that, because this is why I was urging people to wait till we get more information, because more of a picture starts to emerge. But the meeting that they're talking about takes place like a couple days before that Megyn Kelly interview. And when he goes and talks to Megyn Kelly, he is talking about how blown away he is by how high the temperature is on this thing and how much the pro-Israel side is snapping back at him just for the crime of, as him and Megyn Kelly say, the crime of moderating a debate, hosting Tucker Carlson. Not even anything that you know what I mean? And it just jives with Candace's story a lot more than it jives with Bill Ackman's story. But I do wonder, like, what was that like? You know, I'm sure, I know Josh and them were bitter about it afterward. I don't know why he agreed to do it. And this is always, and I said this at the time too, or I definitely said this to you privately, Rob, a bunch. But like, I also I thought I did wonder at the time, like, why is Charlie Kirk setting me up to look so good here? You know, like, he booked me. It was the final event of his biggest event of the year. And he ran a one-on-one debate and had me go against someone who I had already smoked, who I was kind of guaranteed to do again. And it did seem like he was setting me up to succeed here. It's certainly, all I'm saying is I don't think at a Ben Shapiro event, there is no chance he ever would have booked the final thing to be a debate one-on-one between me and Josh Hammer. He would not have booked. Number one, he wouldn't have me at the event. He would never consider having me at the event. And if he was going to, he wouldn't set me up in a situation where I could end up looking good and winning the day. Charlie did do that. Charlie also is here, talking when there was all of that hysteria going on. What was the tone of a meeting between a bunch of hardcore Zionists, you know what I mean? Hardcore Zionist activists and Charlie Kirk? I imagine it was pretty tense. And then we have Charlie going on an interview the next day talking about how tense all this shit was. And so, I don't know. I just tend to, okay. You don't have me convinced with this Israel done it theory yet, because I don't think you have a theory or any evidence. But if we're talking about the Charlie was going through an evolution on this topic theory, that I think has some real legs on it. Any thoughts on any of that, Rob?
All sounds fine to me. The only thing that stands out slightly contradictory is I did feel like when I watched the debate, He was interjecting fairly, but with clarifying questions that had much more of a trying to protect the Israel narrative kind of bent to them.
Okay, it's either that or it's protecting himself. Like going, hey, I'm not the one saying this. Just to be clear, I'm not the one saying this here, but the guy I'm hosting over here is the one saying this. You know, again, nothing that I'm presenting here at all is conclusive at all. I'm just telling you all the information I have. But the big question does become now, right? As we alluded to this yesterday, and of course you have this Pam Bondi clip, which by the way, let's play that. The big question now is what, well, of course, look, there's several big questions, but perhaps the most important question is what actually does come of this? Who does, while you have so many people competing over how to use this for their own political advantage, like what actually does end up coming of this? And I will say that if, like somebody, oh man, I can't remember who had thrown this out. I thought I saw like someone who I follow on Twitter had proposed like a federal holiday for Charlie Kirk that would be like debate day, where we have like an open discussion of ideas and we honor his legacy about like, the need for debate and conversation. And like, I was like, oh yeah, I really like the idea of that. And then other people are like, because of Charlie Kirk, we should shut down hate speech. And I would just really caution against people going down that road, which, by the way, seems to be damn near the polar opposite of the first proposal, which seemed like a much better way to honor Charlie Kirk. But let's play this clip, Rob, that you sent over, because I did think this was worth discussing. But here's Pam Bondi talking about, hate speech.
Level, the anti-Semitism, what's been happening at college campuses around this country is disgusting. It's despicable. And we've been fighting that. We've been fighting these universities left and right, and we're not going to stop. There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see
all right, let's pause it right there.
Going after these?
See, you guys can give me shit for not buying your goddamn conspiracy, but I'm sorry. I just fucking keep my eye on the ball and focus on the shit I can. And tell me I didn't fucking call that one, Rob. I literally said on the last episode that's how they're going to try to use this, just like with the immigration thing. Oh, what's the problem? What's the lesson from Charlie Kirk's death? Anti-Semitism, Rob. What does that have to do with any of this? What does that have to do with any of this? Has anybody, I'm sorry, was there even an anti-Semitic engraving on one of those shells, Rob? I heard stuff about gay and fascist, but I didn't hear anything about the Jews. Oh, there's Rob warned us that his camera might die at some
swap
point.
The battery real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, no, it's Rob's. No, it's a problem. Rob is expressing his solidarity with Black Lives Matter for a brief moment, which is important.
Don't get me group on, and I might end up on Pam Bondi's list.
Oh, there you go. But isn't that something, right? Like it's like, oh, so that's what the takeaway from Charlie Kirk is, what they're going to try to use it as, right? We got to crack down on what? On the pro-Palestine left. I literally said it the other day. That's what they're going to go for. And I think people like should really think about this, right? A lot of us probably, even me, I think probably was, I was probably a little, I don't know. I tried to be fair with the lefty protest movement, that sprung up after October 7th. And, there were times where I did feel like they were doing stupid things and, having dumb messages and kind of pro-Hamas-y type of, slogans. But the bottom line is that they were a real problem for the political establishment. And in the year of 2024, in an election year, when the Democratic establishment needed their left-wing shock troops, those left-wing protesters were all too busy protesting the genocide. And they even called the sitting president of their party Genocide Joe. And this was a huge part of why Donald Trump won. is a huge part of what drained enthusiasm from the Democratic ticket and what drained outrage about another Trump presidency. Because it's real hard to be outraged about Tony Hinchcliffe making jokes when you were just protesting a genocide. It's just hard to make that one sound like it's more important. And, you know, they stood up and were not, you know, they stood up against the political machine, and they took some lumps for that. You know, they got viciously demonized. People got kicked out of colleges. Legal residents got deported. And now, of course, just watch it, because this is what they always try to do. Now the regime will try to take this energy from Charlie Kirk and rechannel it into something that helps them advance their aims. And I think in this case, it's trying to claim, right, that it's hate speech. It's, hey, Rob, you know how you feel about people celebrating Charlie Kirk getting murdered? Well, that's why we can't have hate speech. And that's why we got to shut down this kid who just said from the river to the sea.
For a tad of context, she did send out a tweet that somewhat walks this back and says hate speech means calls for actual violence. But JD Vance made a comment on hosting Charlie Kirk's show about we have to go after anyone who is, advocating political violence. It was something along those lines. Stephen Miller made a bolder claim. Then, of course, they asked Donald Trump, and he interjected with Trump stupidity of, I think we should be going after ABC News because you guys are unfair to me. And that doesn't add a lot of context to how they're going to define political violence or who they're going to go after. But there does seem to be a bit of a drive to actually unroot these larger left-wing corporations. And there's probably some government funds and probably some ways that would be noble to reduce them. But the clouding of waters between words and violence, and then going after people for speech or labels such as domestic terrorism is definitely a scary territory.
Yeah, look, dude, we kind of talked about this a little bit on the last episode. We'll probably talk about this more in the future. And both of us were kind of like, we got to kind of think about this and work out our own thoughts. But I will say that I really understand. So we made the point before where it's like, look, you're never going to live in a world where there's no type of conduct that can't get you fired from your job, right? I don't know. If you are saying really, really wild things, oftentimes people won't want to work with people who say those. And okay, now that being said, I never want to see someone get their livelihood ruined. I'm always very squeamish about that. I do understand from a right-winger's perspective where you said, do you remember, Rob, there was this one high profile case. It was some lady during, I think it was in 2020. And she posted on her Facebook page, All Lives Matter. And she got fired from her job. So she got fired. They ruined this woman for posting All Lives Matter. And so if you're a right winger and you just sit there and you're like, yo, we'll get ruined for that. But then somebody else can just make a video about how gleeful they are that an actual human being got murdered who was literally guilty of the crime of saying, I'm a Christian, let's talk about it, and just gets murdered, and you could celebrate that. And so I do understand the people who are like, yo, this is crazy. If they're going to weaponize that against us, then we should call this person's job and get them fired, whatever. Now, I'm never going to be the one calling someone's job and getting them fired, but I do understand where some of those guys are coming from, because the sheer hypocrisy of it is so outrageous. But what we should all be together in is that the government should be nowhere near that goddamn conversation, because that is just so dangerous to have the government start deciding what is the thing you're not allowed to say, or you can face these repercussions. The term hate speech should never come out of a government employee's mouth, period. The term Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States of America, the term you're allowed to use is incitement to violence. If you want to speak about a crime, then speak about a crime. But you don't speak about a made-up category of speech that's hateful. Because you're allowed to hate things, right? This is, so we should never be going down the path of being let's hand it over to the government to prosecute speech crimes. I mean, you would think right-wingers would have learned that much. And the one final thing I will say, and this is something that I think just Well, I think this is part of the reason why so many conspiracies are going so wild. And well, look, even as I'm someone who's not maybe jumping on board with some of these conspiracies, I did say earlier, and I really do mean it, that we just know that the government is full of shit and that whatever story they give us will always be bullshit. But it is amazing how you see in a situation like this that trust has just evaporated and nobody's going to believe what the goddamn government says about you. You just see, it's too obvious. Everyone can just see, like, oh, even Pam Bondi here, you're already trying to use this for your own ends. You don't really care about getting to the bottom of this. And I have been really stunned at how poor a job Donald Trump has done. Like, you would think in this moment, you'd need to really like convince the country that you're going to get to the bottom of this. And instead, I don't know, like, it seems, did you see that there was like the thing where he was dancing at the game? There was the one point where they asked him about Charlie Kirk, and then he just pivoted to how they're having the new rooms at the White House done. And you're like, dude, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like Donald Trump cares that much or appreciates the gravity of this situation nearly enough. Just my 2 cents on it. Final word to you, Rob, and then we'll wrap up.
Back Thursday, subscriber episode. Go to partoftheproblem.com and you can watch all the subscriber episodes. 2 p.m.
Hell yeah.
Live. Is that when we're live? 1 p.m.?
1 p.m. 1 p.m. Thursday. Well, I got another episode tomorrow, but then 1 p.m. Thursday. Well, that's when you'll be